I have come to understand how the simple fact the power of this country has come to set the terms and norms, all the rules we follow, the standards that we live under, and how we're supposed to react and how we're supposed to talk. Um, the popular, the powerful uh, people that are in charge in this country. We live in a country where we have seen just about every race victimized at one point in time. If it wasn't the Indians in the beginning, the Native Americans that were fighting for their right to exist, their right to own their land, to stay in their land, and not be pushed into Indian reserves or into the deserts practically, as colonizers sought to take advantage of them and take their lands and take everything that they worked so hard to have and possess. Um, from them to the African Americans, well, the Africans that were brought over ships into this country, many of them, as I read in the studies, they were smashed in boats in these spaces that were just inhumane, the way they were treated. Many children, many women, everybody smashed together like if they were animals. It impacted me a lot, this class. I heard stuff here and there throughout my course, through my life. I've heard stories and whatnot, but I never really read into the information. I never really dove deep into understanding the true nature of the struggles, how people suffered entering this country, and how people were taken advantage. And reading most of this course, it really made me upset and angry at points and moments. But I've come to see the resilience of all of them, of the Native Americans, the African Americans, the Mexican Americans, the Asian Americans, how they all fought in a certain time in this country for their rights, for their voices to be heard. These were people, strangers from other countries, coming to make a future in this new nation, to leave their old culture, their old ways, and come and start a new life, start a new way. And I believe that's the beauty of the United States of America, that you can come as you are, who you are, and you can make your own new culture with your family. And it's a multicultural country. I think that's why a lot of people love the idea of trying to come to the United States. But in the beginning, and still till today, the supreme power of this nation was based on European beliefs, that the white race holds everyone's fate in their hands. For instance, ideas like Manifesto Destiny, when the settlers came, they came as explorers. They came exploring, and they ended up staying. And they started colonizing, and they settled in. And the settlers grew a country. They grew a country, and through this country, a lot of races suffered. A lot of people were not given rights. A lot of people were stripped of their rights, of their dignity, of their heritage, of their culture. But many of them stood strong and fought back. Manifesto Destiny was an excuse that they used to take from sea to sea, from the East Coast to the West Coast. This idea that it was their destiny to take the Americas from the East Coast to the West Coast. The people that were in charge, obviously, was the white race, were European descendants. They established superiority to all other races. They began as explorers, they colonized, and finally they settled, and they took over this country from sea to sea. It was known, the Indians would call them the white men, the white colonizers. And the idea, the white supremacy, the culture of it, it had managed, oppressed every race that was not met to their standard of perfection. If they were not given what they were born with, their appearance, it was just appearance at the end of the day, that they clinged on to their God-given right, so they seemed to say. The New World was deeply influenced by internal colonism, and This consists of a powerful dominant group exploiting the Native Americans and the abundance of the land they possessed. The colonizers sought to use assimilation as a method to try and erase other ethnicities by making them form similar attitudes, characteristics, so the natives wouldn't cling to their old ways. They tried having them adopt their methods of living, their standards of living, their religion, the way they did business, the way they conducted themselves, the way they dressed, everything. They wanted them to be more civilized. They were looked at as savages, the way that they dressed, and the way that they lived. The natives stood tall, though, and resilient against the face of racial injustice, against racism, and all sorts of divisive tactics that were used to try and dilute their beautiful culture. The Native Americans were forced to interracial marriages, and this was another method that they used in order for them to become one with the settlers and abandon their old ways and accept the new ways. And like that, they tried to erase their customs, their culture, their heritage. But these people were deeply rooted in what they believed till this day in their reserves, in the reserves where they live. They still cling on to their old ways. They cling on to their old ways and their methods of how they would run, how they would lead their people. The song I chose is written by Wyclef Jean, and it's called If I Was President. This song gives the listener an example of how the country would react to a black president. Wyclef Jean sings about the course of his presidency and how quick and swift it would end. He mentions he would be elected on a Friday, assassinated on a Saturday, and buried on a Sunday. He helps the listeners understand that we live in a day and age where racism still exists in the shadows. In our study of ethnics, it teaches us how the black community was treated very harshly with no mercy, almost if they weren't human. Through the course of this song, he mentions true change that can truly help all racial groups, not just benefit one. This sort of idea is not a popular idea. This opinion of him giving everybody, as he mentions in the song, the gas prices, lowering them, and he mentions the history of the black community, where they came from, that they were brought here. They did not come willingly. They were forced to work the lands. So with this sort of mentality, it wouldn't be accepted in our time still. There are many voices, many people that still cling to the old ways, many racist people that wouldn't allow these kind of thoughts to be echoed in the White House. I learned quite a bit in this class, and I've come to understand that there are many voices that were lost through time, many that were muted, many that were blocked, many that were forgotten for a moment. But I have learned that they didn't die in vain. Many have passed down from generation to generation the stories of how they fought for equal rights, how they had to struggle in this process to stand strong in the face of adversity, in the face of racism, in the face of many unjust courthouse and situations where they had to go to the court and they would lose appeals and they'd keep fighting and pushing. There were many that marched, many that represented. There was a lot of history of people that fought in the courts, that fought in the judicial system. They fought to change. They fought to rebuild and restructure the laws in order for many generations to come to have an opportunity to live in a world where we're all accepted, no matter of where we came from, of our accent, or the color of our skin, or the food we eat. these people fought for a better future, and I believe that we will get there eventually. They can only hold, humanity can only be held to this idea that only one race can rule them all, and you have to be a certain color in order to be respected, in order to be listened to, in order to be treated with respect. I believe we all have a voice at the table, and the time of racism, it will die eventually one day. It's an ignorant way of thinking. It's a very dumb way of living life. But I believe that we will reach that point. I don't know when. I hope I get to see it in my lifetime, but we can only hope that we don't take steps back. I believe we're in a moment in history right now where the soul of America is being fought for drastically, where there are people that have emerged with the rhetoric that is so dark and very old rhetoric, very old ideas of the past. The idea that this country needs to be great again. It needs to be something that it was before, but this country was never great. This country is becoming great and great every time somebody stands up, and every single time somebody voices their opinion for the greater good of everybody. That's when this country becomes greater. That's when this country becomes better. I believe that only that will help us in the future. But I did enjoy this study. I did enjoy this class. I did enjoy reading and watching the videos and seeing how the course of this country has taken some hard passes. And there's been, on both sides, a lot of bad stuff done to one another. If it wasn't the tears of the trails of tears, if it wasn't, the civil rights movement, there were many situations where, people died on both sides. People were hurt on both sides. And I believe, we got to see past that. We have to understand that mistakes were made. Harsh, very harsh mistakes. But I believe we have a better future in store for us. But that's my video. That's what I'd like to share. Like I said, this song impacted me years ago, way before I even took this class. But it impacted me, and it had me thinking, why couldn't we have a president that is African American? Why couldn't we accept that? I didn't understand that our country was still at a stalemate with racism. We're still fighting it. It's still alive in our country. It's still something that is deeply rooted, and it just awoke. It practically awoke. It was awoken, by a powerful voice in the office. And unfortunately, it takes several steps back, I believe. But I know that we'll get back on course. I know that the country will get rid of this hindrance, this ignorance of this ignorant way of thinking. I believe that we'll succumb this. We'll pass this. It'll be taken out, and we'll reestablish our walk, and everybody will be on the right track again, I believe. But thank you, and I hope this was in some way kind of a help to you guys, understand what I understand now. So thank you, and I hope you guys have a good week.